Is it in the keys? The fingertips that reach out to touch them? The string that begs to be bent? Or is it in the notes on a page? A foot to a pedal? The infinite space between imagination and skill? Or is it simply music?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 13th Note Art of Mastery podcast. I am your host, Jeff Spike Wong, and today we are talking all baseball because, you know, as you well followed me, that I love baseball and play competitively for the last few years. And today we're talking about something very special. This thing is called the knuckleball. And the knuckleball has been around for over 100 years. And one of the things that originally came up with, it was called the flutter ball or the shine ball. And it was used and credited to Eddie Seacott of the Chicago White Sox. Now, of course, I had to do research to figure all this out because I had no idea. I grew up in Houston, so I had Joe Niekro in the 70s watching him. But his brother, who was at that time, Phil, was pitching for the Atlanta Braves. And those two guys were just baffling the major leagues with this knuckleball. And then on top of that, my favorite team at that time was Los Angeles Dodgers. And they had Charlie Huff. And he threw the knuckleball. So incredibly, this knuckleball thing has always intrigued me for years. I had friends in Little League. We threw this thing, never in a game. I remember one time a guy from another team decided in Pony League that he was going to throw a knuckleball. Needless to say, that one pitch went over the fence.
Yeah.
So now get into where today, where baseball has changed so much and pitching has changed so much. The guys who go 9 innings and throwing 400 innings a season, or three high 300s are absolutely gone because of they're protecting the arm. But this particular pitch doesn't put the same kind of strain on your arm. So today I got someone who's very special that's in this caliber, this so-called the specialty of baseball. And this is Mr. Chris Nowlin of Knuckleball Nation. And he's going to talk about the greatness of this particular pitch. How you doing, Chris?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. So as we were talking before going on to stream live, you're still playing competitive baseball. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I haven't been. So I had been playing professionally all the way up until COVID. I had a really good contract lined up playing the minor leagues, and COVID blew that all up. And obviously that was in my late 30s. So I haven't really played competitively for a few years, but I am planning on making a comeback this year at the professional level at the age of 43.
Wow, that's almost unheard of at upper 40s and still playing on a high level of competitive, right?
Yeah, I mean, a buddy of mine just did it. A guy named Joe Beimel. You might be familiar with him if you follow the major leagues. He pitched, I think, 12 or 13 years in the majors. And at the age of 44, he made a comeback all the way back up to AAA because all of this new training really benefits everybody, especially people in their older age. So Joe Beimel went from a lefty who threw about 90 miles an hour all the way up to 95 at the age of 44. So he got signed again by the Padres. So I'm looking to make a similar comeback. Obviously, with a knuckleball, you don't have to throw extremely hard. But I have been on a velo program the last, say, year or so. So I'm actually, at my age, I'm lifting heavier. I'm more explosive with all the training. and I'm throwing harder than I ever have, through my previous more than a decade of professional baseball. So I figured might as well try to make a comeback. I don't see the classic knuckleball in professional baseball anymore, and I'm hoping to bring that back and then maybe make the impossible happen and get to the major leagues. And maybe there's
Yeah.
a resurgence of the classic flutter ball, because the guys who taught me, Charlie Huff and Phil Necro, they threw that thing maybe 65, 70 miles an hour. And obviously Phil rode it all the way to the Hall of Fame. So it's an extremely effective pitch, but it's fallen by the wayside, especially since COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic that the journey you're currently on. And let's just start a little bit further back. Uh, how old were you as a kid when you started playing baseball?
Well, I have a really strange story. I played Little League just like everybody else did. I grew up
Mhm.
in Boston. I grew up in the greater Boston area. I shouldn't say Boston.
Yeah.
I
So this
was a
fits.
suburb. Yeah, absolutely. And I played Little League like everybody. Now I'm a really big guy. I'm 6'5",
Yeah.
and I'm really big and strong. I'm just that's my genetics. And so in Little League, everybody thought I was going to be the next, just a really great baseball player. And it was simply because I was big. And so when I hit the ball, it
Mm.
went out of the park. And I was hitting pop flies essentially, and people misunderstood that as power. And
Mm.
and as I grew bigger, what I realized is I really love the game of basketball. I grew up watching, I'm old enough to remember the very, very tail end of Larry Bird's career, and I
Yeah.
loved watching him play. I essentially became an all seasons basketball player. I didn't play baseball after Little League. And then I went off to college, and, I spent some time in college. Essentially, I was obsessed with wiffle ball growing up. Me and my buddies would play wiffle ball all summer.
Yeah.
But I was playing basketball for the school. I didn't play baseball. And so we got so obsessed that we built a little mini Fenway Park. We actually tore down some trees in the woods and built a Fenway, scaled down 4.2 exactly. And we went around to all these, and we permanently installed it. Even as kids, we put the post 3 feet in the ground. It stood for about 15 years, from
Wow.
what I understand. And
Yeah.
we put lights up in the forest. I'm sure it was all sorts of codes being broken. We ran extension cords from 2 different houses into the woods, um, and we could play, late at night. We even made a jumbotron on a piece of plywood. But uh, I would I would pretend to be Tim Wakefield, because around the age of 10, my father took me to Fenway, and it was the first time he allowed me and my buddy to run around the park by ourselves. And so we went out to we went out to the bullpens to yell at the pitchers. We ended up sneaking right down to Stephen King's season tickets, and then we got kicked out promptly. Um, but then we ended up behind the backstop, and just so happened that Tim Wakefield was taking a no hitter deep into the game against the Oakland A's, and with the umpire out of the way at Fenway Park, you're only about 30, 40 feet away from the catcher. And so he was warming up in between innings, and I didn't really care about baseball at the time. I was trying to play basketball, and I saw this knuckleball floating around. And back then, he was throwing it pretty slow, 62, 65.
Mhm.
And so it was very visible. You could just see the ball not rotating whatsoever, and it would just drop into the catcher's lap. And I was just floored. As a kid, I thought it was magic, because it was moving 2 or 3 times and wasn't rotating at all almost every time. And I was looking around at the adults around me, just thinking, like, is this real? Like, what am I watching right now?
Yeah.
And I felt like that night I fell in love with it. The ball was, drifting in this misty night right in front of the Sitco sign. And I just thought, this is surreal. I have to figure out how to do this. So luckily that weekend, the Boston Globe ran a full page picture of his grip, taped it to my wall. And I was quietly obsessed with the knuckleball since I was 10 years old. And a lot of my friends were playing baseball, so I'd crash the baseball practice every once in a while, and I'd play catch with them. But really, I sharpened it on the wiffle ball field with my buddies. We'd play obsessively, from whenever the weather warmed up in April all the way through November. And we went to tournaments, and we actually won a bunch of money. We beat everybody, and I would throw
Wow.
knuckleballs. And once I got to college, I was just messing around. I bought a bucket of baseballs and a cheap glove. I would sneak into the baseball facility around lunchtime almost every day, and I'd throw buckets of balls into a sock net off the mound. And when it came time to graduate, my buddies actually found me doing it. And they were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just, I throw knuckleballs because I think it's fun. I pretend to be Tim Wakefield." They were like, "This is really good. You have to go show somebody." So they found me, before the internet really ruled everything. They somehow, I think through Baseball America, the magazine, the publication, they found me a tryout for the Cincinnati Reds near Boston. And so I went to the University of Massachusetts, way out in Western Mass. So I drove a few hours one morning. I borrowed spikes because I didn't own any, and I borrowed baseball pants. And luckily, somebody was my size. And I got to this field, and a guy named John Brickley was there. He was a cross checker for the Cincinnati Reds. And if you know anything about the structure of baseball, cross checker is kind of a big deal. He can kind of sign you on the spot. And so this open tryout was a circus. There was hundreds of people there because they're all trying to get seen by this guy. And I had no idea. I just thought this was normal. And so I showed up. There were 300 guys trying to try out. And it was 7 a.m. They lined us all up in the stands. And Brickley said, "Hey, if you don't throw 90 miles an hour, I don't care. Like, please go home." And I went, "Well, I don't throw 90 miles. I don't think I do." So I'd never been gunned, so I just thought, I'll stay. I drove all this way. I'll stick around. And they cut all the position players down. It took almost all day. We're talking about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. We started this simulated game, and we were all told we're only getting 3 hitters, no matter what the result is. We got to get through like 100 pitchers. So luckily, I was assigned the 9th pitcher because I would have been there late into the 9th, and the guy pitching in front of me was the number 1 pitcher at UMass, my college, and he was like 6'7", throwing 95 miles an hour. And I just thought, we warmed up in the bullpen together, and I'd never been that close to something that fast. And I just thought, man, this guy's really good. I'm winning way over my head. And he goes into the game, and the scouts had wanted to see the same 3 hitters. So we had the guy that had AAA experience in there. And so this college pitcher goes in, the first fastball he throws gets rocked for a home run. And I'm going, man, I'm going to get demolished here. This is really bad. But, might as well go in there. So I walk in, and they said, "Hey, big guy, what do you throw?" And I said, "Knuckleballs." And they were like, and I was like, "That's it." So
that's great.
I got up there and I struck out 3 guys in a row.
Wow.
And I thought, well, that went well. And I left. I knew I didn't throw 90, so I started walking off the mound, and they actually said, "Hey, big guy, we want to see 3 more hitters." Okay. So, none of the guys got it out of the infield. Same 3 hitters I faced. They all hit it, but nobody got it out of the infield. And started walking off the mound again. They said, "Hey, Knuckles, the cross checker wants to talk to you." Okay. So he takes me into an office, and he gives me a ball, says, "How do you grip it? Who taught you?" He had this big, "Who are you? Where'd you come from?" I just told him, I learned this since I was a kid, just throwing it with a wiffle ball, and now, with a baseball. And he was like, "Who do you play for?" I said, "Nobody." And he said, "If nobody knows about you." I said, "No, sir." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to try to encourage the Reds to draft you last this year as Mr. Insignificant." And I was like, "Excuse me?" So that was a big shock. And so I was driving back to my college, and my dad called, and it was right around graduation for college. So he was asking me, "What's the plan?" And I said, I think plans have changed pretty dramatically. Unfortunately, he called back and he said the Reds aren't willing to do it, but he said you have to go chase this thing. You have this rare skill. And luckily, he convinced me I sold everything I owned in the front yard of my college house for about $500. I packed up my Jeep and I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I could throw year round. And I started training myself. Went to every tryout I could, and I got the same sort of reaction from every scout that I saw. It was, "Wow, that's really incredible," but I don't know how to tell my team about this. There's no protocol for this. Okay. That was what I was told everywhere. They say, "I'll make a phone call," but I don't think, they have this paperwork where, it has velocity and, what do you think about their curveball? Nothing about the knuckleball on their sheet of paper. So they're saying, I have nowhere to take this. And then, so I was getting frustrated. In about a year of bartending at Red Robin in Phoenix, Arizona, and going to every tryout I could. I got wind of a invite-only White Sox tryout in Long Beach, California, and I just showed up. And I learned in the baseball world, if you show up with enough confidence and pretend like you belong there, nobody asks questions. So I wasn't on the list to try out that day, but they let me in.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
And luckily, because they said, all right, you can throw second. So I get up on the mound, and scout starts watching me. I throw about 3 pitches, and he says, hey, shut it down. And I was like, oh man, I drove all the way out here, 6 hours of driving. And I'm pretty upset. This was about a year into it. I'm getting really frustrated. And he says, hey, calm down. I have a buddy coming. I want him to see you. So I said, okay. So I waited around for about an hour, and then Charlie Huff showed up. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, all right, Knox, get back up there. And luckily, I threw really well that day. And Charlie Huff called me horse bleep with potential. And it was the greatest compliment I ever received in my life. And knowing Charlie, it's really hard to impress him.
Yeah.
So somehow he saw it, and he said, all right, you've got potential. And he gave me this crumpled up piece of paper, and he said, call me in 2 weeks. I said, okay. So I go home all excited. I set the clock exactly 2 weeks later. I give him a ring, and he said, hey, we're all going to be meeting at this at Cypress Community College in Fullerton, California. Come on out. So I show up. It's all the knuckleballers of the time. It's Ari Dickey there. Guy named Simon Ferrer, and then tragically he passed away, but a guy named Charlie Hager was there. And they're all in organizations. Ari Dickey's knocking on the big league door at the time, and I never played baseball in my life. And I'm in this with this crew. Charlie didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So those guys are all asking me, hey, you're the Anaheim Angels guy. And I'm like, no. They're like, well, then who do you play for? I'm like, no, nobody. And over a course of about 4 months, Charlie kept inviting me out. And, he slowly installed professional mechanics into my body from the ground up. It was very frustrating. He didn't even watch me throw the ball. He would just say, hey, your footwork is sloppy. Go home and fix it. This is how you fix it. And so he kind of Mr. Miyagi'd me. And then after about 4 months, he finally started watching the flight of the ball, and he said, I think you're ready. And I was like, ready for what? And he was like, I'm going to try to get you a job. That's how my pro career started. So I ended up, none of the affiliate teams wanted to take a chance on a guy that never played. So I started a long journey through independent baseball, which for a pitcher is a very viable path to the major leagues. Maybe not position players, but my first job was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I showed up, and I was a complete and total rookie. And luckily, during spring training, I had a buddy that I had made in Phoenix. We'd all trained together, who was a minor leaguer he was a low round draft pick, and he had Tommy John surgery. He was making his way back. And so during spring training, during drills, I would stand right behind him, and he would turn around and whisper what we had to do, because I'd never been a part of any of it. So I didn't look like a total fool.
Wow. What an amazing journey just to get into playing baseball. That's an incredible story, Chris.
My very first game I ever played on a big diamond was AA level.
Yeah.
Baseball.
And how'd you do?
I walked a guy, but then I struck out Fernando Valenzuela's son. And then I rolled a double play. So an unconventional 1-2-3 inning.
Yeah. Well, as long as you get out of it with no any kind of devastations and disasters.
Yeah.
That to me is good pitching.
That was Fernando Valenzuela's son had already touched us for 2 home runs and a double. And so the manager threw me in to face him because he was frustrated with him, because he'd eaten our other pitchers up.
Sure. And I'm definitely thinking you're the only knuckleballer on the squad, right?
Yeah, I was the only knuckleballer in the league, maybe in independent ball at the time, and maybe minor league ball. I mean, it's exceptionally rare.
Yeah. And let's talk about that for a second. I mean, having the knuckleball being that effective, what is the reason other than is it just not attractive like, slam dunk is to basketball that we just rather see 90, 100 miles per hour fastball versus the guys are swinging and missing a 65 miles per hour knuckleball?
Well, I think if you're a young pitcher right now, what do you invest your time in? You can go down this path where, if you show any athletic promise, they can essentially teach you to throw 90 plus.
Hmm.
Um, you spend time in the weight room, you get really explosive. I've done a lot of that, during my comeback now. I'm actually very, very strong.
Yeah.
And then you just sequence your body right. They have slow-mo cameras, and they've broken this down to an art form, and there are these very famous businesses now, Driveline and Tread, these kind of places who, they're not cheap, but you show up and they're going to hammer you into a guy who throws hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can go down that path, and it's nearly guaranteed that you're going to be throwing hard enough to at least play in college, maybe crack professional baseball. Or you can, spin your wheels trying to learn the knuckleball, which takes a lot longer, and there's no guarantee.
Hmm. So developing an effective knuckleball, in your opinion, what is the amount of time that you have to invest in? Or is there just no measuring stick at all?
That's a tough one because, I spent, that Malcolm Gladwell famously said it takes 10,000 hours to
Yes.
master a skill. Now, if you take 10,000 hours, just you break that up into throwing sessions, you can't really throw full speed every day.
Right.
It takes an exceptional amount of time. And luckily, I was obsessed with this thing as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Started with a wiffle ball, which is much more forgiving. Ended up going into the baseball, which is really, really hard because now all of a sudden you're on a slope. You have to throw it. People think 65 miles an hour is slow. It is comparatively in professional baseball. But throwing a baseball off your fingernails at 65 miles an hour takes a lot of energy, much more energy than most people understand. And so it's not like you're babying the ball at all. What's remarkable about the knuckleball is the energy that comes up through your body to allow you to throw hard. You actually have to take that energy and put it into the center of the ball to kill the spin.
Mm-hmm.
The knuckleball itself actually it absorbs some of that velocity energy coming out of your hand. Mm. And so you can't throw it very hard. R.A. Dickey came around, and he was a kind of a different beast. We can talk about that because I developed alongside him. I saw the whole thing, and him and I would talk about it occasionally.
Yeah.
But he figured out like a different way of pitching, but we can get to that. But it's you can't throw full speed knuckleballs every day, maybe every other day. And you might be able to throw for 45 minutes before you're too sweaty and tired without taking breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just do the math, add that up to 10,000 hours. It takes a very long time. So hopefully, best case scenario is you find a kid, all these clinics that I do, we find 10-year-old kids who are pretty good at it. Okay, well, that's setting them up for all that 10,000 hours to take place. Because I know when I started learning, R.E. Dickey was there, and obviously his career took off, but it wasn't overnight. It took him 5 years to go from the guy who was learning the knuckleball to the Cy Young Award kind of pitcher that you saw in the Mets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I played competitive men's ball, and there's a huge drop off between the 35 league and the 55 league because the 55 seriously is more recreational,
Yeah.
Because you got guys almost into their mid 70s still playing.
Yeah.
So your average velo in that league is probably low 60s at the best. So throwing a 50 miles per hour knuckleball is effective in that league. Now, in the 35 league, we got guys throwing high 80s and low 90s. So I've definitely faced that and noticed that I had a knuckleballer on my team. And one of the things that I thought is that his knuckleball was coming at me because I played catcher and I caught him. he was coming at me at low 70s with the knuckleball. And first thing I notice is the knuckleball is hypnotic. So for the brain of the batter, looking at the pitch and looking for where the release points and so forth, by the time they make a decision, that hypnotic effect of the knuckleball cause them to have that momentary lapse of pause. So can you share and talk a little bit about just the visual effect of the knuckleball, how it freezes batters?
Well, yeah, especially at the professional level, you're looking at guys who've played their whole lives, and you have to understand the timing of hitting. You're facing a professional hitter, a professional pitcher that's throwing 90 plus miles an hour. The ball's on you in 4/10 of a second.
Yeah.
And so, I've got buddies out here in Los Angeles that have played in the major leagues. One of them is Alex Blandino. He had measurably one of the best eyes. He only played in the big leagues for 3 years, but he had one of the best eyes for the strike zone.
Hmm.
And it was fascinating to talk to him that he could recognize a pitch while the ball's on the pitcher's fingertips. And essentially you have to see that, and then you have to read the spin. And so that reading the spin against you have 4/10 of a second.
Yeah.
You have to read what spin is on the ball, and then science shows that you don't see the last maybe quarter of the flight of the ball. The hitter can't see it. It's invisible. So they're looking at the hand position and the spin, and then they're swinging the bat at where they think the ball's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's why there's so many levels in the minor leagues. So these guys are sharpening that skill. And so you watch a major league hitter, his brain is this computer of all these thousands and thousands of professional pitches he's already seen, so that he can see a new pitcher out of the bullpen, read the spin, and hit it, effectively.
Yeah.
When you throw a knuckleball in there, it just breaks that computer down. It frags it out. Because that finely tuned, trained machine breaks down. There's no answer to it at that point. And so they see it out of your hand and they have no clue. All of a sudden, that incredibly fast circuitry just goes bang, like, I don't know what to do here.
Interesting. Wow.
And and it is hypnotic. So when the ball does, if you face me, I'm going to brag a little bit, in 2 professional seasons, ever since 2008, the pro ballparks have had trackers, and I've thrown what I believe, I've never seen any better data. I've thrown the best recorded knuckleball, I think, in history since 2008, obviously.
Yeah.
The 2 seasons I averaged 65 RPM on my knuckleball. So that's average.
Okay.
Now, 65 RPM, a really good fastball in the major leagues is 3,000.
Okay.
So 65 RPM is essentially, when that comes out of your hand at 65 RPM, to the hitter, to the catcher, it looks like it's not rotating at all. It's obviously RPM is over a minute.
Yeah.
A knuckleball at 65, 70 miles an hour still gets to the plate in 0.56 seconds. It's still, 0.4 is 90 miles an hour, 0.56, it's right behind it.
Yeah.
And again, people think 65 is slow. When you see a knuckleball not rotating at 70, 65 miles an hour, and you don't know where it's going, it suddenly seems fast because it's chaotic.
Sure.
And so it's just completely frags them out. They see this ball not rotating. They have no idea how to anticipate it. So they're swinging at where the ball is at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the knuckleball has proven itself to break exceptionally late. So they're going to miss that ball by 6, 7, 8 inches easily.
Right. Yeah. One of my earliest experience as a hitter against a knuckleballer was back in California. I was 29 playing in an adult league, and this guy threw a pitch that just seemed to be extremely floating and slow. And I read it off his hand, and I'm going, okay, well, this obviously is either a changeup of some sort, or he's just trying to bait me on chasing something. So I just kind of laid back on it. And it's amazing on baseball on just how much can go through within the second of your mind and everything, right?
Yeah.
And of course, this sucker got to the plate and dropped right into the zone. The catcher bust out laughing. I bust out laughing and the umpire bust out laughing
Yeah.
because there was nothing that any one of us could have predicted that it was going to be that beautiful of a pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that to me was a validation of, man, try to face this every other pitch. You really have been having to, okay, because now your next pitch coming at, you're kind of recalculating your thought, and he's going to throw a freaking fastball right by you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of funny. I remember vividly being obsessed with Wakefield growing up. I got into Fenway quite a bit. I would take the train in, even as a kid, to go
how
try
cool
to see
is
him,
that? Yeah.
even without tickets. I knew at Fenway Park where the military tickets were being sold. And
Mhm.
about the second inning, they would give away the military tickets to the kids that were hanging out.
Oh, that's great.
And and so I would usually sneak into a Wakefield start. And I remember watching Wakefield strike out Michael Young, one of the best hitters at the time, the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
I think he was a third baseman. You'd usually hit 350 every year. He struck him out with 372-mile-an-hour fastballs in a row. It was, and I was sitting behind the backstop. I snuck behind the backstop, and I knew just how incredible that was. And I don't think a lot of people, it's a baseball game. Everybody's just enjoying themselves and
Sure.
pastime. But I was so locked in on what just happened. I was just like, you guys, did you see? That's incredible.
Right.
He just struck him out with a middle school fastball over and over and over again. One of the best hitters in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a mind game when it comes to pitching. I really do believe the art of pitching is more extensive than most people give credit for in baseball. A lot of people think this, being a great hitter, being a great, velocity type of pitcher is, the standout. And it's because, I think we grow up in a society where we really cherish athletes that has exceptional athleticism, the Michael Jordan, the guys that could do things that not everybody can do on the floor. And on baseball, definitely the long ball hitters, Yeah. But at the same time, I grew up in Texas, and yet I have a big aficionado tour. The guys in the 70s, of course, the Reds, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, because these were teams that had, I think, unique talents. And that's the part that I really loved. Like you being a Boston guy, you appreciate this. I read the biography of Carl Yastrzemski. Love the guy because I always thought he was the consummate professional ball player. And he talked about the art of playing off the wall. Man, who actually studies this, right?
Yeah.
That's like Tim Duncan, the art of going glass, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that there's a level of artistic integrity that goes into sports that a lot of athletes just don't even go into. They're just constantly training for strength, constantly training for athleticism, but not really understanding the fine art of the game. Where this is where the knuckleball really jumps out at me. One of my favorite pitchers coming up in the Atlanta Braves and of course Chicago Cubs is Greg Maddux, because the professor actually put a lot of thought into how he wants to play against the batters.
Yeah, I just don't even think Greg Maddux would be drafted today.
Right, because he's a different. Well, I think the whole matrix of judging pitchers has changed.
Yes, it has dramatically.
It's a disservice, I think, to baseball.
I think it is too, but I'll tell you why it exists. So first of all, I live here in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, I mean, there's a whole nother story. A billionaire approached me one day and wanted to fund a knuckleball facility. And we went through years of research and he bought a few different locations. We never got off the ground. We were a month away from getting off the ground. I'm not really ever sure why he pulled the plug, but we did a ton of research, and him and his team, and me and his team, and we discovered that the majority of professional baseball players come out of Los Angeles County, more than any other state in the country.
Wow.
And now Los Angeles County is not small. It's 13 million people. I'm sure that's the population of some states, but that's where I live now. And so when you're here in this hotbed of baseball, you see, first of all, they can play year round. Obviously that's an edge.
Yeah.
Secondly, this place is pockmarked with these facilities that have what's called a TrackMan or a Rapsodo inside them.
Mhm.
And these machines will measure your spin, your pitch performance. And that's all they are. They're machines. And they use, I think, Doppler maybe. TrackMan's this big pad that sits behind the catcher. The Rapsodo actually sits on the ground. And they give you spin rate, the direction of the spin on the ball, the spin efficiency. So if you're trying to throw a curveball, if it's actually on the right axis,
Mhm.
it'll show you how big the ball is broke. It'll show you the velocity at the hand, the velocity at the catcher. Gives you everything you need to know about the pitch, and that's why I know personally, I know my spin rates.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, spin rates, right? But I know my spin rates from professional baseball because the facilities have cameras that actually watch the ball. These Doppler machines can't track the knuckleball.
Hmm.
But when I throw a knuckleball on them, it says no pitch.
Wow.
Yeah. Anything under 500 RPM doesn't register on these machines.
Interesting.
So, and actually contacted the manufacturer of TrackMan, and they said they didn't believe anybody could throw a ball under 500 RPM. So they programmed the machine to say it was a mistake.
Wow.
Well, I said, well, I throw 65 RPM. They were like, well, you're the one guy. So we're not going to change our software for you. So
Wow.
anyway, so any kid can go into any one of these facilities, and a lot of them will have a weight room in there. They'll have these things called VBT devices that show you how fast you can lift weights. So it increases your power. And there's this very regimented scientific method where they just prime your body to be able to throw harder. And then once the machine registers certain spin rate, certain velocity, they just send that data to a team, and that's what signs you. There's no scout that shows up anymore.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, these machines can't track a knuckleball.
Hmm.
And so you're out of the loop. Now you're out of this pipeline. You're completely out of it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that definitely changes the dynamics of how things are being graded and things being looked at. But here's my thought behind it too, is that if there's a pitcher that's effective and it's, let's say, in high school, and for 2 years in a row has no losses, setting,
Maybe.
district records and strikeouts.
If you take the example of Greg Maddux, I would imagine, and I know from interviews listening to him, he didn't try to throw the nastiest pitches. He was trying to tunnel. He was trying to tunnel. So his idea of pitching was actually what they use now. So he was trying to throw his fastball at the same place his curveball was coming in, and you would have to guess which one it was. And he didn't want to make it recognizable instantly. So he wasn't trying to throw the nastiest curveball. He was just trying to fool you.
Right.
His pitches on these machines would be pretty mediocre as far as the machines are concerned.
Right.
And so he'd be out of the system too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's sad because Greg Maddux was extremely enjoyable to watch.
Incredibly, yeah.
The 90s Atlanta Braves was just something entirely different.
Well, that whole crew, even Steve, who's the lefty, Glavin, he was fun to watch too.
Yeah,
Similar.
Tom was great. Smotes was great.
Smotes would be a guy that would get drafted today, though. He had the stuff. He was the stuff guy.
Yeah. And it was a great mix. Like the late 70s, early 80s Astros had a great rotation because you had J.R. Richard, you had Nowlin, you had Joe Niekro, and then you had a Bob Nepper, a lefty that threw this funky ass curveball. That, just imagine that you're geared up for these two flamethrowers, and the next day you got this lefty throwing this funky,
Well, my favorite duo, I think, in the history of baseball was the Rangers in the '80s, Nolan Ryan and Charlie Huff.
Yeah. Oh, I can only
think that would have been
having to face
tough one too.
Yeah. And especially when Nolan refined his pitching at that point, I think he was so effective because I just remember seeing him during that time in his early 40s, thinking to myself, what the hell did the Astros do to let this guy go? Because he's still bringing it even better than he was when he was with Houston.
All those legends were told to leave teams. Wakefield might have been the only knuckleballer not to be told to leave. I mean, Hoyt Wilhelm, the Hall of Famer, played, I think, for 13 teams.
Yeah, isn't that something?
And Phil was told to leave. the Yankees and the Blue Jays. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then everybody, Charlie was told to leave the Rangers, and he still had 5 years left.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy too, because the hitters that I loved, like just Steve Garvey and Pete Rose and, guys like that, they all talked about, how hard it was to hit Charlie Huff,
Yeah.
Yeah,
He must have been, because he was such a long arm guy. It would have been very deceptive timing wise.
Yeah. Yeah. Charlie Huff had a little like a whipping action.
He talks about it a lot. Again, Charlie is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
I see him a few times a year. It's so strange that because I chased this dream, I've my baseball heroes are my friends.
Sure. Sure.
So I got really close with Phil Niekro too. After I started playing professionally,
Yeah.
he started taking me under his wing as well. He taught the knuckleball completely differently than Charlie did.
Oh, I bet.
Which was very mind blowing to me. It was like there's essentially two different ways to do this thing. But
Yeah.
Charlie tried to, he envied Phil Niekro for his short arm action because a short arm action is easier to time. And Charlie would try to shorten his arm action in the off season, but every time he did it, his arm would hurt.
Interesting.
And so he had to extend his arm. And by extending his arm, the timing got a little more difficult. And if you look at those two guys' careers, they both played 25 years.
Yeah.
Phil has more strikeouts, more wins. In the aggregate, because of his long arm action, it made him just a little bit worse over that long period of time. And that's why Charlie's not in the Hall of Fame. And he'll tell you that.
Wow. What a just little minute detail assessment.
Yeah, tiny little things. Yeah.
Yeah. Craziness of that. And I noticed that, even though Phil and Joe are brothers and they both threw the knuckleball, Joe threw it entirely different,
Yeah. Joe was, Phil told me about that too. Joe was a conventional guy, and Phil was always chirping in his ear to say, hey, you got to throw the knuckleball because their dad taught them how to do it. And he said, it's for dad. That was his big sell.
Yeah.
And Joe had an arm, Phil didn't. But that's why if you watch the old Astros games, Joe threw it pretty firm, maybe mid 70s, high 70s.
Yeah.
For that time for a knuckleball, that's to throw a knuckleball in the mid 70s takes a lot of effort. And people don't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. But here's my take on also the harder and the faster of the knuckleball coming at you from a batter's perspective is easier to hit. For me,
it can be because the timing becomes so much different, so much more difficult. There's this is part of my Knuckleball Nation approach is what I saw. Okay. When I first started learning this thing from Charlie, R.A. Dickey was there. And it was fascinating to watch him because here's this guy, first round draft pick. He's already been to the big leagues as a conventional pitcher. And they tell him he's a 4A pitcher, which is this slang term for a guy who can't stick around in the big leagues, but he's too good for AAA. And so his career is stalling out. The Rangers are getting a little bit, impatient with him. Yeah. And they say, hey, you can throw that knuckleball. You're going to become a knuckleballer. When I first met him, the impression that I got, and this might be wrong, was that he was pretty upset about it. He didn't want to be a knuckleball pitcher.
Yeah. Wow.
He was throwing himself into it, but when we would throw at this community college, Charlie would say, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Charlie would leave. And RA would start throwing his conventional stuff. He'd stop throwing knuckleballs in the bullpen. And to me, his conventional stuff, and again, I'm this newbie, I'm wet behind the ears, I've never played pro ball yet. His conventional stuff was mind-blowing. It was the greatest command I'd ever seen up close. He would sit this 19-year-old catcher, the kid would put his glove up, he'd hit it with a sinker, hit it with a slider. And all of it's coming out super firm. He's a first-round draft pick, he could throw mid-90s. And I'm just thinking, that's not good enough. That's wild. That's not good enough. And then Charlie would come back out and RA would start throwing knuckleballs again. But what the Rangers wanted to see from him was they wanted him to throw like Wakefield. Wakefield was the measurement, the standard of the time. Now, Wakefield's average knuckleball is 65 miles an hour. So you take a guy throwing 95, you tell him to throw 65. And it looked awful on him. He looked so uncomfortable trying to throw it slow.
Yeah.
His arm was so strong that he just looked like he didn't care. It looked sad. And
Wow.
and to be honest with you, he didn't have a great feel for it. And so
Mm.
we would face these hitters at this community college. They'd hit him around a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he would talk to Charlie, what can I change? So I'm looking at him in those days, in those early days, I thought I was better than him. And I'd go in and face the same kids. I'd get them out and I'd go, okay, I'm not even signed yet. And then I watch RA get put on the major league roster to start the season that year. And I'm
Mhm.
like, no way. If he's in the big leagues, I'm going to be in the big leagues tomorrow. Like, this is going to be great. And then his first start for the Rangers, he breaks a record for most home runs given up in a game. I think
Wow.
it was six home runs in an inning and a third, something like that.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, that tracks. Like, he wasn't looking too good,
Right.
And so they sent him back down in the minors to keep working on it, and they keep telling him to throw like Wakefield. Now, I'm in touch with him occasionally through this time. I think we're emailing each other. And he starts bouncing around. Now he's on the Twins, he's on the Mariners, and they keep telling him to throw this Wakefield style knuckleball. And I think he was in the minors. I believe he's in like Oklahoma City. And he was like, I think my career's over. I think this isn't going anywhere. So I'm just going to do it my way now. I was like, okay. And suddenly he starts firing that thing as hard as he can. And obviously, bang, now he's a Cy Young Award winner. Right? First knuckleballer ever to win a Cy Young. What I realized watching him do that was his spin on these slow knuckleballs wasn't really good enough. It wasn't consistent enough to be like Wakefield.
Mhm.
But he took that same sort of mediocre spin and he put it into a hard knuckleball, and suddenly it's moving everywhere.
Mm.
And so what it showed me is that there's this, you can spin a harder knuckleball a little bit more. It's more forgiving.
Mhm.
And you're still going to get movement that'll get a big league hitter out. But to throw a knuckleball that hard, the timing of that thing becomes so incredibly difficult that a lot of guys, even if they could throw harder, like myself, my spin would start becoming more inconsistent.
Yeah.
So when you try to learn a knuckleball, you have to make a choice of whether to throw like R.A. Dickey style, where it's 2 or 3 rotations, but you have to throw it 80,
Mm.
or you're going to commit to killing the spin altogether, where it's less than 1/2 of a rotation, and you can throw it 70, 65, maybe 75. But talking with all these guys in the big leagues, a guy like Stephen Wright, the all-star for the Red Sox, he started telling me he could throw at 80 miles an hour, but he started losing the feel for the spin around 73. He knew that.
Mm.
And so he stuck around. If you watch, the vast majority of his knuckleballs were about 72, 73 miles an hour, because he knew that's where he was most effective as far as killing the spin is concerned.
Right.
So essentially, there's 2 different avenues for this knuckleball, and that comes from watching Dickey develop his new style of knuckleballing. Now, what I know, there's new research that just came out. I was told by the author of a book. I just got called recently. They now know that the knuckleball stops knuckling at about 250 RPM. And if you look at guys like Dickey, his average spin rate was like 500 to 700 RPM. But technically, he wasn't even really throwing a knuckleball, in a technical sense.
Right.
It was more of a fork ball. He would hit you fork ball, then blast a fastball by you.
Yeah.
Obviously, still, I mean, you want a Cy Young. He holds the ball like a knuckleball, and then obviously, occasionally, what's terrifying if you play catch with him, his arm is so good.
Yeah.
Occasionally, he'll square it up like a Wakefield knuckleball at 80, and then you're going, uh-oh.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's such a great analogy and breakdown. Thank you so much for that, because that really, changes the perception. I think every knuckleballer is unique. No different than every athlete who's great at something has their uniqueness to it. So let's talk about the Knuckleball Nation in your clinic. How did you got that started? And basically fundamentally for anyone who's interested in building a pitching repertoire. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, it was 2000. The years kind of get lost on me. I've been playing ball for a while. I want to say it was 2009. Might have been 2010. I'm playing minor league ball, which doesn't pay well, and I'm trying to make a living in between seasons. I'm living in Las Vegas at the time. I tried to live a different place every off season for a long time,
Yeah.
and I decide, I learned how to build a website. I built a rudimentary website called Knuckleball Nation.
Sure.
Originally, I spelt it Knuckleball, but the nation with a K, just like knuckleball is spelled.
Yeah.
But I got a ton of, I thought that was kind of cool, but I got
Right.
a ton of emails asking me why it's Knuckleball Nation, and I was like, so I had to remove the K. But
Oh, that's funny.
first website was like blaringly red, and there was just one option to buy an instructional DVD that I would mail out. This was so
Mhm.
long ago. And to my surprise, it took off. And a lot of people were ordering it. And then I
Right.
decided, I didn't have any social media. This was just from Google searches, I guess.
Yeah.
And people were sending me emails and trying to send me videos, but these janky old videos at the time.
Yeah.
And I decided to make an announcement. Hey, let's do a knuckleball clinic here in Vegas where I live and see if people showed up. And I got 25 people from all over the country to show up.
Wow.
And this is in the infancy of the internet too. So I have no idea how any of this is going to work, and it works.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, this is a way to make some money in the off season while I play baseball.
Sure.
And over the years, what happened was, somebody would come to Vegas. They'd be from, say, New York City. They'd say, hey, I want to set up a clinic in New York City. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they would help me communicate with the people there, advertise it. Now I'm doing a clinic in New York City. And then I decide, all right, I'll ask some of my knuckleball celebrity friends, see if they want to get in on this. So I start doing a clinic with R.A. Dickey in Nashville every year. And then Phil Necro wants to do it every year in Atlanta, which was the big one. That actually kind of got out of hand. There were so many people trying to show up to that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then other cities started getting involved, much like you. You reached out to me, and this was happening before I had social media. This was happening, before the internet ruled everything. And organically, what ended up happening, I would take an event to a city. It would get so popular that, hey, we want to do it again. It would get bigger the next year. It would get bigger the next year, until it was right about capacity for what I could handle, which was like 20 guys at the time.
Yeah.
And this was happening all over the country. And then a guy from Taiwan reaches out. Now I'm flying to Taiwan to do clinics.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then that turns into going to Korea as well and doing clinics there. And then COVID happens. And I don't have any social media, and all these clinics had been gaining momentum on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just goes away. I was scheduled to go to Taiwan March 20th, 2020 with Red Sox All-Star Stephen Wright to do a clinic. Obviously that was the first one that got canceled.
Yeah.
And then bang, 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 they all disintegrated. And obviously we were in lockdowns for more than a year.
Yeah.
And when it came, every state had different regulations opening back up. And I just thought maybe that's the end of it. Maybe that took so much time to build up, and I don't know if it's ever going to come back. So I take a job from my buddies here to GM one of these velocity facilities that we're talking about. I'm going to run the building out of COVID. That's what I was going to do. And people started reaching back out about the knuckleball, but then the big break happened, which was MLB.com called and said, hey, we want to do a spotlight on you. And it was really downplayed. They were just like, yeah, we're going to send a guy out. And this reporter came out with a social media team. They did a story on me, and then that story got, I forget what they said, like 150 million views or something on their website.
Incredible.
And I led the website for a day. And I was completely unprepared for the amount of attention I was going to bring. It was, I got 3,000 messages in the first hour, something like that. It was wild. And then I realized, okay, this is a vehicle, because their whole social media team hooked me up. I didn't even know how to use Instagram at the time. And they hooked me up with all these collaborative posts, and suddenly my account on Instagram was sort of flagged by the algorithm to grow. And over the last year, I've gained whatever it is, 40 something thousand followers just on Instagram. Now I have almost 200,000 followers across all the platforms.
Right.
And that's now how the word gets out.
Sure.
And
sure.
it's a lot easier than sort of organically building. But what's happening is exactly what's happening before COVID is. I'm getting emails from a bunch of people. Hey, we want one in Indiana. Hey, we want one in Seattle.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's gonna grow to the point where I believe I'll be popping around to every sort of region of the country every year going forward now. And then you reached out to me and said, hey, I'm interested in one of these clinics, and we talked about it, and obviously, we'll get it going. I believe this will be so popular it'll trigger an event every year in that area.
Yeah. I'm very optimistic because the people that I got involved with here, and we're in Houston, Texas, Southeast Texas, greater parts, all the way up to Conroe Woodlands, as far as south as Sugar Land. The clinic we're having, it's going to be at the end of April 25th and 26th. It's going to be in Cypress in America Pastime Sports. This is also sponsored with Houston Hardball League. This is the best hardball league in the region. We have 18 plus leagues, open leagues, 35 plus, 55 plus. And the thing that I'm extremely excited about is bringing in this type of information and knowledge about a pitch that I think that could, number one, be very effective competitively. None of us is going for a paycheck at this point in sense of that type of playing. If you're a kid who's going into high school, and what was the percentage? 10% high school ballers ends up going to college playing, D1, D2. And then what? Less than 5% of that goes into pro ball. So the odds are not in sense of favorite and in regards to making a living the long haul. But what is great that most people need to understand is how to create the ultimate baseball memory in your lifetime, which is, I threw a no-hitter in college. I threw a no-hitter in high school. I threw a no-hitter in a 55 league, whatever it may be, that those things can be obtained when you have the right arsenal to work with. Like for me, I have really worked hard on my pitching. Was really terrible at it because I have a shoulder injury from much younger days. But as I work in the tunnel and kept on developing, I can see that what I'm going to bring to the table was going to be something that nobody else was doing in my league, because due to the fact I know and face everybody. One of the key factors is how the knuckleball is going to manipulate the number one, timing. Number two, the psyche, like what we were talking about, the mind seeing the ball not doing something that the slider and the fastballs was doing. So for me to have you down here in person to kind of walk through, to see everybody, that to me is huge. And to have a clinic here that people can participate. There's 2-tier systems. You can come the first day, and that day is only $199. And what it does is it allows Chris to kind of give you all the fundamentals and all the point of views regards to adding the knuckleball into your arsenal. Now, the $395 tier 2 program, you get the first day, then the second day, you get Chris to really help you to look at what kind of pitcher you are, what you can actually develop using this knuckleball and bringing it into the maximum capability and get your optimal level as a pitcher. To me, I think this is great. I wish I could do this 3-4 times a year if there's interest in it, because number one, I love baseball. Baseball is a great sport that is different than any other sports. Defense has the ball first, right? And you're playing, and I have a baseball training book coming out that's going to talk about the dynamics of the 3-6-9 Fibonacci, the diamond pattern, all this thing that is used in the field of play that most people don't really understand about baseball. There's nothing like it. I mean, softball, but that's still a derivative of baseball. So, Chris, when we're getting together in regards to refining pitching and so forth, what are the top 2 things you look at a pitcher and really immediately recognize that the things they need to correct?
Well, like I said, I've been obsessed with this thing on the professional level for almost 20 years.
Sure.
Charlie Huff originally taught me, and Hoyt Wilhelm taught him. And then obviously I learned from Phil Necro. In fact, last thing Phil Necro ever said to me was, "I love you." That's another story.
Yeah.
But I carved as much wisdom out from those guys as I possibly could. And then I applied it to my own pro career, and then I can see now through the application, I can see it in other people. And one of the reasons these clinics become a yearly success is just because of how much I can see, how tiny little tweaks affect the ball. And the first thing I look at is what Charlie Huff did with me. Is it's from the ground up. It's footwork first.
Yeah.
Which blows people's minds. And it was frustrating for me in the beginning to be like, "Hey, look at the pitch that I'm throwing." Charlie's like, "Well, you can't pitch consistently without good footwork." So one thing is footwork mostly, and then allowing the guy to throw without any instruction at first, because
the audio cut out.
And you have to tailor the sort of instruction around the way that guy throws the ball. Some guys throw it like Charlie with a big long arm. Some guys throw it with a short arm like Phil. And you can't really control how your body moves. You can't. Charlie couldn't be like Phil, so there's no reason to teach a guy to try to jam a round peg into a square hole kind of.
That's right. Your audio dropped. I don't know if it's a low in battery or something.
Yeah, I think my headphones battery burned out.
Technology. Can't live without them. Can't live with them, right? So everybody who you can see down, we have ahlbaseballclinic.com. All the information for the clinic here in Houston is on there. Go check it out. You can pay online, get your spot. All right. You back with me, Chris?
Can you hear me again? Yeah.
Yeah, your level's lower than what it was.
Yeah, these aren't quite as nice.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're about to wrap up. I just want to make sure that everybody understood that you're coming to Texas. We're very excited to have you because, personally, even if, just to get you on a one-on-one, me and you, to help me, this is, of course, personal agenda, right? Because I like a lot of ball players out there, we're not here to win any in regards to scholarships. I'm not here to try to get a paycheck. I am here to make the ultimate baseball memory. And what that means for me is, I want to go out there, I want to dominate and win a game as a knuckleballer. Well, not necessarily just, because I just recognize that, number one, I can't throw 90, being the age I'm in. I'm 61 going on 62. The hardest I've ever thrown is probably low 70. And that took a lot of training to even get that. The other aspect of it is I want to come in and save a game. Game's on the line. My guy's tired. Can I walk in and save the day? These are the kind of goals that I have. And I know a lot of teammates and a lot of guys I play and peers. That's the only reason why we suit up every week, because we want to have these great baseball memory. Now, how much memories have I already achieved? I am a better ball player today than I ever have been going through Little League, Pony League into high school. I have already way achieved that. I was way better at 29 than I was at 16, and I'm 10 times better at 60 than I was at 29. At 29, I was pretty good. I was not a bad ball player. I was facing, college ball pitchers. Today, I have 3 consecutive seasons hitting over 500. And this is also playing competitively in the 35 plus leagues. And the reason behind it is, of course, maturity helps. Number 2 is calming self. And I do all kind of things. Like I do sports therapy with hypnotherapy. And this calms my mind down. There's no chatter when I go face a pitcher. So in sense of that type of just understanding about how to get the best performance out of myself, I can't wait to master the level of knuckleball that you're bringing to the table. So what is the last words that you wrap us up, Chris?
I don't know. Is the audio better now? I was trying to fidget with it.
I mean, we can hear you. It's just it's not as robust as it was.
Yeah. You know, the knuckleball found me. I didn't find it.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, you know, I didn't make it to the major leagues, despite how good I can throw them, how well I can throw it. Maybe, you know, the knuckleball found me so that I could spread the information to the world, because I somehow, you know, again, met my baseball heroes, sort of wedged myself into the knuckleball fraternity as an outsider. And then I've gleaned all that wisdom and information. And I think I'm a pretty smart guy. I kind of chop it up into digestible chunks for people to make it easy to understand. And then, then it's up to you to go throw a million of them and master it.
There you go.
But I can definitely set you down the right path. You won't spin your wheels, at least. You're definitely going to be set up for success. I'll be able to put your body into a position to be able to throw a knuckleball. But, you know, that last little bit of feeling the ball off your fingertips is completely up to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic, man. I mean, you know, I'm so glad that we met, and we're going to go forward and put this clinic together, and it'll be about a month from now. And also everybody who is in the clinic is going to get one of these scoring books. This is a Smith Hogan official baseball pitching stat scoring book. This is created by my publishing company. And basically what it does is, you know, the big scoring books that we use in league play, right? Yeah. You have, you know, F3 to, you know, and all that crap. In the pitching aspect of it was always the hardest part, because you got foul balls and whatever, and everybody makes a mess because, you know, half of your team just don't know how to score. So I created this with Yahoo Publishing to be able to really fine tune your scoring. And this is simple enough to do scoring on pitching that you're going to be able to get accurate counts of how many pitches you throw in an inning, who did what, how many foul balls, how many first strikes you throw, what was your efficiency percentage. And if you track your so-called performance throughout the year with this, you will see that who you go against that you have the most trouble with, or who you have the most success with. And this thing helped my team tremendously, because we were able to identify 3 different pitchers on my team on who had the most strike thrown efficiencies, who had the most pitch count, and who actually was most effective under pressure. Now, of course, like I said, none of us are playing for paychecks. Yeah. But when we understand these type of statistics, it changes our confidence level, and it changes our approach to we're playing baseball. And to me, that is number one contribution, is the more you know, the better you can refine yourself. And that's what the 13th note has always been about. Chris, thank you so much, sir. Stay with me. I'm going to play us out. And everybody else, like I said, go down to ahlbaseballclinic.com to get more information. You can also read tons about Chris. You can go check out all his media, the stuff that, you know, Major League Baseball was talking about with him. And, you know, sign up. Join us on April 25th, 26th for the Knuckleball Nation Houston Hardball, basically American Hero Legends Baseball Clinic here in Houston, Texas. And with that, I wish everybody well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next 13th Note Art of Mastery.
Smith and Hogan Softball Scoring Book, now on Amazon.